Wish it was under different circumstances that we're here, but I do want to thank the Coffee Cottage Cafe and the owner Candy and others for scrambling this morning to take care of this thing, take care of this large turnout this morning. Obviously, we wish it was different circumstances that were under that. But on behalf of Ag Commissioner Doug Goehring and myself, we want to say welcome, glad that you're here. We got a number of folks here. When we, as people know from 2017 and every emergency we've had in the state, we take a whole of government approach. So we've got people here from the state legislature, from FSA, from Extension, the Ag Commissioner, myself, National Guard, Emergency Services, North Dakota Department of Human Services. We've got a whole range of folks that are here. We're going to try to briefly share some things about what some of the things that we have available, but the real purpose of us being here is for us to learn from all of you and what you're going through right now. As you know, most of the billions of dollars in farm aid support are all federal programs. With the exception of FSA, we've got largely a whole of government state contingents here. But as a state of North Dakota, we want to do everything we can in our ability to support, whether that's through the State Water Commission or Emergency Services or other programs that we have. And we also want to be the strongest advocates possible to make sure that we're pushing on the federal government. The current Secretary of Agriculture was the former Secretary of Agriculture, and so Doug 1, as I like to call him, you can call me Doug 2, but if you're confused or want to address your questions, but Ag Commissioner Doug has had a relationship with Vilsack. I was on a call with him yesterday. Senator Hoeven and Senator Kramer and Congressman Armstrong are pushing hard to make sure that at the federal level everybody understands the challenges that we're going through here in North Dakota. So again, part of who's joining here today, we got Adjutant General Al Dorman, who leads the National Guard in North Dakota, and they're obviously a fantastic organization that's doing great things for our state all the time. But part of the responsibility that he has includes the emergency services, and to his right, Cody Schultz, who leads the emergency services for North Dakota. You'll get a chance to hear from each of them. And then Miranda Meehan is here to my left, who's the Extension Disaster Coordinator statewide for the North Dakota Extension Service. And to her left, we got John Pekowski, who's the interim state engineer from the Water Commission. He'll be talking a little bit, and I think do we have handouts here also? Some, not enough for everybody here, but we'll talk about that here in terms of some water programs we have going on. In addition to that, we have other folks that are here that I want to give a shout out from Extension. But Carl Hoppy, are you in the room back here? Raise your hand. Okay, Dina Kemmel. Dina in the room. They're pointing to her. She's there. Thank you, Dina, for being here. Brenda Klebe from Pierce County. Brenda here somewhere. Another hand. They're over there. Leo, right there. How do you say your last name, Leo? Bartolon. Leo Bartolon, cropping specialist is here, and then Rachel Wald from McHenry is here. Thank you, Rachel. So, and you guys have all got your great NDSU Extension green tags on. You can find them. They've got some great programs, and also from USDA FSA, we've got Gary Kraft. Are you here? Gary, there you are. Thank you. We may give these guys a microphone at some point today. But to get us started here, again, I want to just go show of hands. How many of you are within 20 miles of Rugby here? Okay, so then how about 20 to 50? And beyond 50 might have come? Well, thank you for being here today, and again, regardless of how far that you've come, we have the new drought map which just came out this morning, and we've gone from 99% and change of North Dakota being in drought to now we are officially at 100% of the state is in drought, and 2/3 of the state is in D3 or D4. That's 64.5% is an extreme or exceptional drought. The 18% that's an exceptional drought, which of course encompasses a big chunk in the darkest part there in the center of the state, which many of you probably are hailing from. is that's the highest percentage we've had in exceptional drought at any time of the year in 20 years. And of course, normally it wouldn't be in June that you would find yourself in that. As all of you know, after we had the incredible record snowstorm and in October of 19, during harvest and all that record wet weather and fall flooding that many of you had to get through, that we find ourselves now in the period from last October to this spring was the driest winter in history in North Dakota since we began record keeping 127 years ago. And of course, even though in the last week we have had some rain and some unusual rain, anybody here from, I don't think anybody's here from Marion. There was a few folks yesterday in Jamestown from there, but we had a little spot that got 10 to 12 inches. They don't know because the 10-inch rain gauge overflowed, okay? So then we had people that lived 10 miles away that got almost nothing. So, but that wasn't certainly, that one anomaly was not enough to solve that problem. And I think, again, if you're here from, McLean, McHenry, Mercer, Oliver, Pierce, Sheridan, or Ward, that's in the heart of the challenges that we're here. I do want to give some acknowledgments to some of our legislators that are here. I see them in the room. Representative Dick Anderson from Willow City is here. Greg Westland is here. I see him here. I saw Paul Thomas is over here against the wall. Saw him earlier. And Jerry Klein, who I'm sure many of you know, is, I know he's out there in the hallway someplace. Jerry?
I just saw Representative Klein out, or not Klein, Nelson.
Oh, Representative John Nelson, okay. John's kind of like me. I always sat in the back row in school, and he's kind of like a back row guy, I think. But I always thought the back row guys were good. But anyway, but I want to say that again, we're here to we want to make sure that we're here to listen. The legislators are also here to listen. The legislators have been exceptionally supportive. They knew when they left town that we were heading into a drought period. They made sure there was a little extra money in the Water Commission budget. Doug and I both serve on the State Water Commission, and we did approve another $2 million for the livestock, drought livestock program, which I hope that many of you have taken advantage of either in 17. We've reloaded it with more funds. John's going to talk about that in a minute. And I think, let me just show a hand. How many of you are also livestock producers in the room? Okay, that's just about everybody. I think you all know, I don't need to tell you what's happening on that front. Where the sale barn here in Rugby or down in Napoleon, last week they were expecting 2,500 head. In Napoleon, 3,500 showed up. And I know that this is a challenging time because a lot of you had to culled your herds in 17 and you got the genetics you like, and then now we're in a spot here where we can't even get through the summer. So we know that drought can be really devastating. The other thing that comes along with drought and weather like this is also wildfires. Cody will talk about this, and the general will talk about this as well, but we are having a record wildfire season this year. We've had over 1,400 fires in North Dakota so far. Over 100,000 acres have burned. We had our first wildfire in January. Fire season doesn't even officially start, till about this time of year, and we were fighting fires down by Hettinger and Scranton on the South Dakota border in January. 100,000 acres, that's 156 square miles, that's 4.5 townships have burned, and we're in the middle of June. So that by comparison, last year in the entire year, we only burned 12,000 acres in the, through the whole 12-month period. And so again, we want you to be careful and be safe out there. Cody will talk about, we want to make sure that you're being safe, but we want to make sure that everybody's being smart. If you are working and you are in a situation, we do ask all of you, call 911 first, and then try to put out the fire second, because we have had incidents already this year where we're all North Dakotans. We know, hey, we got this. We can figure it out. We can handle it. We can take care of this ourselves. Why would I bother my neighbors? Why would I bother someone else? I'm sure all of you have got fire extinguishers in your vehicles and on your farm equipment, but call 911 first, then start working on trying to put the fire out, because then we can work together to do that. How many in the room work in your rural fire departments or as first responders? A number of you. Let's give those guys a hand. Thank you for everything that you're doing. And so I'm going to kick it over here to Doug for some more comments. And again, we want to get through these. And so we'll go Doug. John will talk about the water program. We'll save General Dorman and Cody for bat and cleanup. But we'll, after Doug and John go, then we'll get into hearing questions from all of you. But again, one guy who's always fighting for you 7 by 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year is our Ag Commissioner. So give it up for Doug Goehring.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning. I know that these are challenging times and we seem to live in a world of extremes, but quite frankly, I think we understand in agriculture it always seems to be extremes and there always seems to be a lot of challenges. Today I just want to share a few things with you, and I guess if nothing else, get some feedback. Sometimes there's different scenarios you hear about. It gives you the opportunity to go back in and tweak some things or request how some things may work. I mean, it's been meetings like this in the past that we got some changes in from 2006 that came into after 2010, and then there was changes for the 2017 drought. There's been a few tweaks since then. For example, you no longer have to look at a disaster declaration to trigger programs that you can access within USDA. So if you're in a D3 or a D4, it triggers and it automatically makes certain programs available. ECP, like Emergency Conservation Program, the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program, and God forbid the Livestock Indemnity Program, which is always available if you have some issues. And I know that USDA might be able to address any of those or answer any questions. But there are programs like the livestock forage program, and then there were some funds that were actually available to the state of North Dakota, and I know that Miranda is probably going to address this a little bit, but they're shared between our department, between NDSU Extension. They deal with stress management, credit counseling, mediation services. We know that it isn't necessarily something that people are thinking about at this moment, but we know everybody's under stress, and you certainly have some opportunities to access us and access NDSU Extension for some help and some assistance in that area. One of the things that is, I guess since February, I've continued to get calls about the drought. So it's almost old news to me, and it's not to dismiss it or disrespect what everybody's going through. But it gets to the point that sometimes I even forget some of the things that I probably should be sharing. So when the conversations and the comments and the questions come up, it kind of triggers a thought, or at least some things that we've worked on already or can share more about. So I've probably forgotten more than I've need to know and need to share. But hopefully through the conversation, we'll be able to stimulate some more conversation. Livestock producers, first and foremost, are the ones that are going to be more devastated by any drought. Because as farmers, I'm there myself, we have crop insurance, and although it's not the greatest tool in the world to mitigate our risk, it's at least a tool that we have. But our livestock producers need water and they need feed. And we're challenged this year because this drought is far-reaching and it goes beyond our borders, which means you may be in a situation where if you can't retain most of that herd, you have to sell some off, or if you want to retain what you can and move them to another state, feed costs are through the roof. I know it already. We've been talking, looking at this situation. I remember when we were feeding cattle for $1.25 to $1.60 a day. Now we're talking about $2.67 and upwards and over $3.70. At that, I know that you have to deal with how many of these cows do I actually retain? And that's an issue. Now, if and God forbid we get into this conversation or people have to go down this road, but if you do have to disperse and eliminate some stock out of your possession, there's at least some tax laws that have changed since 17 where any gain that you have this year from selling livestock, you don't have the liability as long as you're purchasing those livestock back within the next 4 years. So at least you're not being punished for that. But that's not so easy when you're talking about somebody that's looking at exiting the business anyways in a couple of years. Why would they want to buy back livestock and start the headache all over again? So those are things you're going to probably have to meet with your tax men about and think about. I know that our younger producers are challenged even more. It's not like you have a lot of equity or anybody new that's got into this in the last 10 years. It's been challenging, and now all of a sudden you have this situation. And you're competing with neighbors and other interests for land, pasture land or grazing land or hay land, and it almost seems hopeless. We just want to hear some of your situations, if there's something we can do with respect to where you possibly can go, what you can possibly do. We'll do our best. We have the hay hotline going on, and I'll tell you in the past, it's been well received. It's well received this year, but I have way more requests than I do people to actually help. At least we have trucking services on there, so if you want to move hay or move livestock, we have that available. I believe, less than 40 people that are offering either feed, pasture, or feeding services. And generally that's well into the hundreds, but maybe people are still trying to sort out their situation and figure out where they're going from here. So please access our hay hotline. There's an interactive map you can go on and you can get more information there. Risk Management Agency. This has been a contention and a problem over the years. You as farmers or you as livestock producers that do farm and you have crop insurance want to get something released. Oh, can you hear me a little bit better there? I'm sorry. Yeah, just wave at me and say, speak up or something. So there's frustration because I know people have asked to have crops released early. Depending on if you have those contracted or whatever your intention is, please work with your crop insurance agent, adjuster. Some things are a little bit easier than others as to how they're moving forward. I know that there's been some replant issues. There's cover crop that people want to put on ground or they want to replant sorghum. And the reality is the way RMA has been structured, and you really have to work through every scenario separately, it has to, in most cases, be an approved or a programmed crop that can be insured. And some actually haven't even certified their acres yet, which gives you a chance to actually change what you want to do. And I know it's more expenses, it's lost expenses also, but you can forego the premium and then plant sorghum or plant millet. But those are tough decisions to make, and I don't want to make them for you, but we'll certainly help you work through some of that. The best resource you have is going to be your agent and then working with your crop adjuster. I've had a lot of people ask to get everything zeroed out. I will tell you that practice went out the door about 10 years ago. But there are situations where people have gotten a zero, but the first thing they'll do is tell me, yeah, after I got the zero, I went through an audit and it just delayed when I got paid. So if you're an adjuster, and you may feel insulted, but if they come to you and say, we're going to mark you as 1.8 bushels, and you're mad and upset with that, you may want to take it because the alternative may not be pleasant. And it may take months before you get paid anyways. It's your operation, it's your decision. I'm just sharing this information because when people get hit with this and they're already under stress, it just causes more frustration, more stress. Then they're calling me and they want me to go hang someone, shoot someone, or haul someone to jail, and I don't have that authority. So I just want to let you know right up front. We can get into more discussions, and I know that we have people around the room that are in the know, and they can certainly share their information also. The other critical thing is, and practices have changed over a period of time, we used to always go out there and do all the fertility up front. Some people have had the ability to look at feeding the crop later, plant it, and then see how it's going. That helps a little bit. If you have to go back and plant sorghum or millet on it, at least you may not have high nitrates. But another thing to do is certainly talk with your vet, talk with the feed specialist, the people in the area. You may have to get some of that feed analyzed before you cut it. So, thank you. With that, Governor, I'm just going to pass it over, and I got to find some water. I thought there was some out there.
There is. Yep, I'm good. Okay, thank you, Doug. John, you want to give the quick recap on the livestock water?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. My name is John Puskowski. I'm the interim state engineer for the North Dakota State Water Commission. Just here to tell you a little bit about a program that the Water Commission has, if you haven't already heard, and that's our Drought Disaster Livestock Water Supply Assistance Program. That's a program whereby the commission will help cost share at 50%, up to $4,500 per project, and 3 project maximum per producer for putting in a reliable water source. That reliable water source would be new wells, pipe extensions, pasture taps, hooking up to rural water, those types of things. We have that available in all counties of the state except Richland County because of the drought that is ongoing right now. I do have a handout, as the governor alluded to earlier, if you're looking for some information. Also, you can go on our Water Commission webpage. They have a host of information there, or you can call 701-328-4989, and staff there will walk you through the application process. Just want to make you aware, this is a reimbursement project or program, and you need to get approval before you construct, before you'll be eligible for funding. So by all means, make sure you get approved before you start the project so that we can actually get the money to you that you need. With that, Governor, that's...
And John, can they apply online also?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Governor. Yes, they can apply online. Again, Water Commission webpage, swc.nd.gov. So there's the process there. We can also help you through the process by calling the office as well. So,
and you guys are geared up, and maybe share how many of these you've been processing and how fast you're turning them around.
Sure. So again, there's been great interest in this. The last time we did this program, it ran for 2.5 years, starting in 2017, and the commission approved, we expended about $1.5 million in funding. So far in the first 10 weeks of this go-around, there's already been $2.4 million approved. Just last week, the commission approved another $2 million in funding for this project, so we're up to $4.1 million in available funding. And if the need goes on, the commission will put more money into this effort. We have approved 600 projects to date so far. So again, great opportunity. Please take advantage, and you know, I know it's not the end-all be-all, but it's a possible help for the situation we're in.
Thank you, and I think, again, the folks that did this in 2017 are benefiting again today because we can get some resiliency in some of these pastures and the same thing. So get out there, build that infrastructure, and connect with these guys. They're committed. They've been turning around some of these applications in 24 to 48 hours, and we're committed to being nimble and responsive on that front. Okay, that helps on the water side. We know it doesn't help on the feed side, but now we want to just Rand, we'll save you guys for later. Hold back. I want to make sure we get a chance to start listening. So we're got microphones at the ready there in the back. Raise your hand. And again, we'd like to have either questions or people sharing challenges, stories, either or things ideas on that we might either push forward for changes to federal programs or things that we can do to help. So who wants to get us started? Got one hand right there. There's a microphone coming from behind you. And if you can stand up and if you can say your name and your hometown area where you're hailing from, that would be great.
Okay, I'm Erica Kenner, and I'm from Leeds, so about 30 miles east of here. And I'm actually here representing North Dakota Stockman's today, as well as I'm a rancher myself. And there is Shane Anderson is also here with me from North Dakota Stockman's from Towner. So he's got some comments maybe to get in today too. But when you were talking about RMA, Commissioner, I know you and I had talked about this last week also, but do you think it would be a possibility to even talk to RMA if anyone could make any headway there to propose even a reduction in the payment if you did go in and seed something else for forage use or graze it or for those acres. I don't know if that would be a possibility to ever get done or something that we could work through to possibly use these acres that are probably not going to make a great crop in the end, but could help feed our cows. The other thing that I'll just get out right away here so that I can let other people speak too, but on the water front, I know we've done some cost sharing on some hay transportation. And in our ranch, we have been using the EQIP program for quite a few years to put in water tanks and in all of our pastures, and we already had it scheduled for 5 of them this year, but NRCS doesn't have any. Their supplies are not coming in this year, and that's COVID related. But I'm sure that's a problem in a lot of areas. So if some of these people can't get those tanks done this year and those lines put in, maybe there's a way we could cost share some water transportation also. Also keeping in mind if you don't have grass, there's probably no need to bring some water either. But if there's areas where you're grazing CRP, you don't have water there or things like that, maybe that could be a solution. So that's what we have. Thank you.
Maybe I'll address the last comment and statement first. There is in USDA a program that helps offset or displace part of that cost for hauling water. Whether this program could be tweaked, I think we'd first have to find out what's actually available through USDA. One thing that the legislature gets very sensitive about is that we duplicate programs or that we set precedent in an area. And I'm sensitive with those guys here that we're careful to do things that can assist, are timely and relevant, and make sure that they're few, far, and in between. With respect to the emergency hay transportation program that we've done in the past, I've thought about it, and we're trying to collect more data. It would mean that I would have to go back to the Emergency Commission and request that authority. I'm not ruling it out, but I want to get more feedback from what's going on. We've used some of those funds in the past to help transport livestock too, not for sale, and we aren't going to do feeder cattle. But if you're talking about your stock cows, your bred cows, those genetics that you're going to keep within your herd and you're going to try to retain ownership, we have allowed those funds to be used to help offset the cost of transportation. But I really need to get a better feel of what's going on across the entire state. So if we just have livestock being sold, we're not gonna use money to just help offset that cost. But if we're transporting a lot of hay and we have livestock that are gonna be caught under retainership, ownership, then we can probably look at something like that. And I could even potentially make it retroactive, but that's why these meetings are important too.
I'll just add on to that, because what Doug was saying there at the end, when we made this modification before, when we were doing the assistance on hay hauling, we had, from meetings like this, people said, well, hey, instead of hauling hay here, can I haul my livestock to some grazing that's available? And we said, hey, basically the same thing. We're either getting hauling feed to the cattle or cattle to where they can graze. And so we did funding on both sides of those. We'll keep looking at that. On the RMA side, Senator Hoeven in a hearing on now 2 days ago with Senator Vilsack in DC made a strong invitation to the acting Richard Flournoy, if I'm saying his name right, hard to say, but he's the acting head of RMA. And we've reiterated that with Vilsack, that we want to actually get the head of RMA to North Dakota on the ground to see what's here about this idea of being able to replant and not run into all the red tape. Because if we don't, I mean, I've seen it in parts of the state when we were traveling yesterday. It was happening in my home country in Red River Valley this spring, where we had guys, using payloaders to get dirt out of the ditches and put it back in the field. I mean, it looked like, oh, there's a bunch of snow in the ditch with a little bit of dirt on top of it. It was all dirt. So we do not want to lose our topsoil, and we've got to educate the folks in RMA that we've got to be able to get some cover crop going on this thing, or we're gonna end up having a long-term serious impact on the future of agriculture in North Dakota if we can't preserve that topsoil. So we're pushing hard on that one.
The other thing I wanted to mention on the RMA issue, we have brought some things up in the past, and the problem is that it's very specific to North Dakota or the upper Great Plains. Then we have to take a different approach, which is more of a 508H product, and ask for something very specific. We have some ideas, and we've worked on this back in 17 and in 19 when it was so wet, especially with Prevent Plant going into 2020. We have some thoughts and some ideas that we may be able to approach this time and maybe incorporate some of this. So any thoughts, suggestions? We'll see if we can take a common sense approach to it. I know this gentleman has a...
Scott Shively, I'm here representing IBAN, the Independent Beef Association of North Dakota. Our president, Kerry Doctor from Denhoff, was out spraying corn this morning. He said that was his only hope of being able to hold his herd together if his corn comes through. He's been looking at his hay fields, and he considers them a complete failure, and they've probably had about 3 times as much rain as we've had in this area. Some of the things that IBAN is talking about, some of the things that have been covered a little bit, emergency haying and grazing, and of course the thing farmers and ranchers always ask for is to get what might be available opened up sooner so we get some decent feed. By the time the government lets it happen, it's pretty much junk, and it'll be even worse in a really dry year. So that would be really important to have adequate funding for water projects, which has been talked about. I think the way I see it, it looks to me like if this thing kind of hangs on, North Dakota's going to end up in a year with about a third the cow herd. That we have about 1 million cows. We'll be lucky to have 350,000 cows. You know, the other drought years, 80, 88, some of those were preceded by a good year with a little bit of a stockpile. And we've had, in this area, really 5 years of drought, maybe a rainy month or 2 in that year. The crops have been okay because of no-till and some of that, but really the pastures and hay have just not. It's been a long time since we've had even an average year for grazing. And so I think that the critical thing is the thing that, you know, Doug talks about being a problem, is taking some of these failed acres and getting something growing on them that might be advantage to cattle. If we don't do that, our beef industry is going to just about die in this state. We hear about the COVID money, and of course the first round of that, as I understand, is all gone, but I would ask that if that becomes available whenever, that ag would get some consideration as a use for that, and maybe this drought instead of other stuff. I know, you know, on top of the drought, we've had 5 years of terrible markets, and they've been just declining. So we're of course you guys with the state, we're hoping you can help get the federal government or our delegation to do more. North Dakota's got a good history in crisis, in that our senators and representatives have done a really good job of getting as much as they could for our state. So I hope these guys can follow that and do the same. And I've got just a little bit of a story. I think it was either in 74 or 76, eastern South Dakota had a terrible drought. And these guys are coming up to North Dakota where we had a kind of an average hay crop. And my grandfather got in on probably a program that the Ag Commission had or something, and he agreed to sell some hay to producer from Peaver, which I think is between Watertown, around Watertown. And these guys are coming up with a semi and buying this hay from Grandpa for $1 a bale. And I said, wow, I'm hearing the prices are, $4 or $5 for a square bale. Why are you selling it to them so cheap? You could sell it for $4 and give me $3. And Grandpa said, what kind of a man are you if it is important for you to prosper or profit for your family from someone else's adversity? And I think it's going to take some of that in this state for us to survive. This is the worst mess I've ever seen. Thanks.
That's one of the reasons so we've had 2 or 3 different disaster programs we've developed in the department, and the last 2 were actually the emergency feed transportation program. I get you about a value system and about the culture of the state and the area and the region. I wish people didn't take advantage of others, and I wish there weren't perpetrators. We have to be careful how we walk into incentivizing, de-incentivizing, managing, or providing oversight in some of these areas. I agree wholeheartedly, and that's why we went and took the approach where when we took information on trucking costs, we knew that people could abuse that. But when you collect enough data and you have enough individuals, we figured out what the average price was, and then we kind of put a cap on it. And that kept them honest. And in fact, what I was paying to haul corn, barley, and wheat out, I was paying far more to haul that than we were hauling hay at the time. So if we go down this road, we're going to continue to structure it that way, and hopefully we aren't taking advantage of the producer who's trying to move something. With respect to the grazing and haying issue, I believe everybody should know, but you can graze CRP. Now, I know there's been an issue about access to CRP and finding landowners. We don't necessarily have that. There's some big challenges there, and if the best thing I can tell you is call me, we'll try to work through some of this, but USDA and the federal government, even the state government, under the Freedom of Information Act, cannot share certain information. So we might have to be a little more creative how we access absentee landowners who have CRP. But at least if you're looking at grazing CRP, you have access to it. It's 50% carrying capacity. You have to work that out with FSA and NRCS, and no more than 90 consecutive days, as I understand. But some of those, and I don't want to speak on the behalf of USDA, but visit with FSA and get some of the information back. The haying issue is a little bit different issue. After 17, we got some changes made where that backed up to July 15th, and I know that there's a request to go earlier. We're working on some things with the sportsmen and wildlife groups, and we'll see what we can get resolved and work with the State Technical Committee and FSA about this issue and NRCS. And maybe there's going to be an option or an opportunity to open it up sooner. But I don't want to give false hope and then break more people's hearts. So,
But it is on our radar, and I did talk with Vilsack about it yesterday, about that August 1st date. In 17, when we pushed on Sonny Perdue, in less than 48 hours, he came back with a change that allowed us to get on that ground earlier and on the CRP acres, and some of those then became permanent rule changes under the last administration. We're trying to see if we can get some of that same flexibility now. Okay, another question. We got one out there, one there, and then one there.
Hey, I'm Dave Migler, live southwest of Rugby, and I got a situation where I rent from a guy, and there's 2 water holes in there. They're going the bad way, but there's a good well there. So being the owner didn't have cattle, he didn't qualify, so I went to Game and Fish, and they said, yeah, we'll cost share, but it's going to take a while. And I said, why? Well, we got to do environmental assessment on there. There could be an old foundation or something. So I said, well, can I put a well in there? I mean, a pump in there and pump it. No, if you start that, you're going to be disqualified. So I think there's too much red tape. Am I wrong? You said they're turning over in 24 hours. I'm going on my 3rd week waiting.
Fish and wildlife or game
Yeah,
and fish?
game and fish out of Upham.
Fish and
Or
wildlife.
whichever.
They're completely different. One is federal government, one is state.
So they,
That federal government, you're gonna have red tape.
so I can go to you and do something different?
Well,
I mean, to me, it's frustrating waiting that long, you know
yeah,
what I'm saying?
before you leave, connect with John and we'll get the
Okay.
particulars. And if there's something we can do to help through the State Water Commission program, we'll do that. But again, if it's U.S. Fish and Wildlife, we did get some action items yesterday in Washburn that were taken with Fish and Wildlife about, so maybe show hands. Is anybody seen U.S. Fish and Wildlife Federal Agency burning sloughs in your area this spring? Okay, so if you've got that, I don't know, Mike, was Reese back there someplace? Right behind you? The guys that raised your hands, did you raise your hands again that had the burning? Talk to Reese, who's right behind there, because we're putting together a letter of all the people, because we've got to, we can't be fighting fires, around the whole state and then have U.S. Fish and Wildlife burning sloughs. That makes no sense. And we want to be very specific on the feedback. So if you can give us, township and where it happened, when it happened, that would be great.
And at least if they're,
What's that? They were burning pasture?
for weed control?
I'm assuming that's what
Yeah, generally that's. And that'd be all right if they would turn around and at least, yeah, the mic isn't on, they keep shutting it off on me. Just leave it on. Part of the problem is that they go in here, they burn off some of these refuges, which I get, you need to get rid of some of the dead debris. But then at least let's let the livestock producers utilize and enhance that entire environment. That's been some of the biggest frustrations of Fish and Wildlife is, yeah, maybe you're gonna manage this, but then manage it properly. Livestock will enhance that whole entire environment.
I'm Hayden Larson from Bisbee, North Dakota, and I run a cow-calf operation, also grind hay for a living. And we got a lot of CRP acres in Towner County. And customers I have affected strongly by this drought need hay. I try to pick up acres for them. It's all spoken for. Guys that sell hay, reefing benefit of our problem. And I think FSA needs to maybe look into, these guys don't even have livestock. Why are they able to take advantage of making hay and, charging a huge amount of money for it when it should be for the producer himself?
So this issue it's not a new issue. It's been around for 20-some years, 30-some years that I've been farming and when I had a livestock operation. There's so many different scenarios to take. There are some times where somebody maybe put up the hay, had livestock, and then ended up having to sell out, and because they were thinking about putting restrictions on the sale of that feed. Then it was unfortunate because now all of a sudden that person couldn't recover any of their costs for that. They couldn't get feed out into the market where it was needed. I think the biggest contention that you hear from farmers and ranchers is somebody's just taking advantage of the situation, and I guess you're gonna have that always, but I'm not sure. We have dealt with this issue from so many different angles. I don't know how you develop rules and regulations that would prevent abuses like that, because even if you're the owner of that, you could actually go put it up and sell it. But there was at one time some type of stipulation that you actually had to own cattle, but then there were people that were actually hired or contracted by livestock producers to go out and cut hay in another state for them and bring it back, and then that would have prevented it. I get it. It's a problem. I'm just not sure how we can actually fix it, because it seems like it should be simple, but the minute you get into it, you end up harming other producers that are trying to, access feed or put up hay or buy CRP, because maybe that's the only thing they can do at the time. They don't have the equipment or the ability to go someplace.
Can't they use our CFAP numbers from USDA Like, if these guys didn't even get a livestock payment, they shouldn't even be eligible, should they? I mean, they got ads on BizMan selling hay, $75 a bale.
So
And
here's the other problem with the CFAP numbers. There are people and maybe in this room and maybe not. If you worked an off-farm job, you weren't eligible for CFAP. There are livestock producers that have 160 cows, but because their wife works off the farm and they had a part-time job off the farm, their income was as such, it kicked them out. My phone rang off the hook. We had a lot of livestock producers in North Dakota, and I bet into the hundreds that weren't eligible under the CFAP program. Or you have people that feed. Well, are you taking care of a stock cow herd, the bred cows, the breeding stock for the state? Or are we going to be looking at grass cattle and feeding operations? See, this gets complex, and it's just dangerous to go down. I agree. I don't think people should be taking advantage of other people. But I'm not sure quite how we close all the loopholes. I think there's areas we can tweak, and we can visit with USDA about it, but we have to be a little careful that we don't harm the rest.
they just told me there's nothing they can do about it. That doesn't matter if they have livestock or not, so.
Cowboy hat right there in the middle's got a hand up, too. He's had his hand up a few times. And then you next. Julie Ellingson came yesterday and said you guys are going to be here today, so thanks for all you do for North Dakota, and thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate you putting this meeting on and coming here and our concerns. I'm a director for North Dakota Stockman's. My name's Shane Anderson. I farm 25 miles here, right inside McHenry County. I won't touch on CRP anymore. I think that's kind of been covered, and everybody's got a lot of the same concerns there. One question I do have is, I know the governor's office has been hit with a request earlier for maybe extending hours of service for trucking, whether it's hauling feed, hay. Could you give us an update on where you stand on that? And one other question, Commissioner Goehring, you mentioned about tax deferment for capital gains tax. My question for you is, if you end up paying those taxes further down the road, year 2, 3, or 4, maybe you have liquidated and decided for whatever reason you're not going to get back into livestock, is that rate that you pay on those capital gains stay with the year that you sold those livestock or incurred that gain, or is it 4 years down the road where maybe we could see an increase in capital gains?
That's a great question, and it's above my pay grade. I would talk to your tax man about that one. I'm not quite sure how that is, but I would almost think the tax.
Ryan Rock, the tax commissioner, along with us next time too.
Actually, I talked to Ryan about this, and because we got into a lot of different scenarios, and he said, you know, when it comes to the feds, I kind of let them do their thing. I don't even want to comment on that, he said.
Well, on the hay hauling's an easy one. Executive order, I can suspend hours of service for hauling. You know, we've done that when we needed more propane, when we had that storm in October of 19. We've done it for the hay hauling. Federal DOT limits it to a 30-day stretch, so we've got that, basically that gun loaded, but we're trying to figure out when to pull the trigger so we can use it in the most strategic point of time.
Is that kind of a one-time request then, or can it be reauthorized like every 30 days? Or
There are some reauthorization provisions, but I can't just roll it over to the next right now. But again, that'd be another thing for us to talk about with the feds, because they create these one-size-fit-all rules for the nation, and then when you have an extended drought like this that goes on for months or perhaps years, then it doesn't make any sense. But we'll keep pushing on it. But we do have the ability to go 30 days with a signature, and we'll pull that trigger when it makes most sense. Part of that, we want to get the feedback from these meetings of how close we are to when we need to pull that.
I know this issue comes up quite a bit, or it's been brought up, and the governor makes a great point. We just need to be very strategic. So asking for it now and, reacting or responding to it might be way too early. There might be a lot more hay that gets put up in July and needs to be transported, or maybe everybody wants to stockpile it and then probably in end of August, September, start to move that hay. I think it's really crucial that if you're asking for this, tell us when you intend to actually start moving hay. And you as a producer, if you're moving your own hay, it's not even applicable to you. It's for the commercial drivers. So let's keep that in mind too. Don't ask for something we really don't need.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you for coming. Lonnie Anderson, northeast here, over by Wolford area, northeast of Rugby. My son is 7-8 years farming, and he's got a couple of questions. The program, how it's set up for, you talked about the zeroing things out, but 15 bushels to the acre in wheat in these big combines. I went through 88 and 89. I tried to combine 5-6 bushel wheat. I worked all day, and I got a truckload and a half, a single axle truckload, not a semi. It wasn't worth it. I had a terrible sample, couldn't keep it full, the combine, and all those bushels went against it, right? All right, 15 bushels to the acre should be zeroed out, sprayed off or whatever to keep the cover so the land doesn't blow. And then something above that number should be harvested for the cows. These cowboys are selling their factory when they sell a mama cow. You sell a factory, you're out of business next year, or minimum, right? Everybody agree with that? Yep. I had a closed herd, 40 years. I always kept my own heifers. I sold them out 2 years ago. It wasn't enough money. I figured I could raise hay, rent the pastures out, and make just as much without a whole lot less work. I feel sorry for these guys. I still have heifers that I buy out of that closed herd and a few yearlings. I don't know where these guys are going to get hay. And these big combines can't do a decent job on 15 bushels an acre. Just can't. And all the hay in the world, we don't have enough hay in North Dakota to feed these cows, let alone grass to get them to October, November. And those dollars that come back out of some of this federal crop insurance, if it comes back, and you talked about zeroing it out, you better take something so you don't get audited. These young guys that are farming need their money. They still got their expenses, right? We still got our expenses in it. And farming costs a whole lot more than what I did when I was farming. I don't think the city boys know how much money we have to spend. A 50-pound bag of canola was $600 when I was farming, and it's still $600, and it's not even 50 pounds anymore. They've learned to clean it, size the kernels, big kernels, medium kernels, and small kernels. You don't even get 50 pounds anymore. That's quite a return on their investment. In North Dakota, we have our own university, and I know how this system works. We're not getting good enough varieties out of SU over down here. They're going to varieties, what's the word?
Biotech?
Yes, that and they have their own, you can't keep the seed and clean it and seed it yourself. Protected seed varieties, okay? And I know how the system works. They come in and do another program, take it away from the seed department, and put all the resources and employees on another project, and we don't develop enough of our own seed. We are paying for that, and if we check off dollars, we are paying for it again. Now that's on the soybeans. Let's use our own university and technology and our people that we raise here in North Dakota. The other question I have is, when I was a kid, every town had CCC, Commodity Credit Corporation. We had bins. Does this country have a food reserve program?
I'm aware of.
Not that anybody is aware of. And I'm afraid when these bushels get harvested, whatever they are, by the time it gets sold, it'll be doubled or tripled what we get. And if you want to keep young farmers here, we got to get a handle on this. Unless that's the desire, is to get rid of the little guy, the mom and pop. If you don't keep young people coming in, they learn from us old guys. I got through 88 and 89 in the same scenario. Wife worked in town, health insurance, those kind of things. That's why that happens. I figured out how to tie a knot in the end of the rope and hang on. My brother was one of the first ones to get sold out. I started in 80 and he got sold out in 82. He was paying double-digit interest rates, up to 25%. Nobody makes payments on 25% interest. Look at the big picture. You don't have to be the smartest man heading the board. Rely on your people that you have around the table. They've got good ideas. Listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know you brought up a lot of fine points there, and the one issue I would say is, if you look at soybeans, for example, I remember when I used to buy 50 pounds and plant them. Now it's 140,000 seeds, and it's the way things have changed. We fought it, we have pushed back on some of this, and it's a free market. Producers make decisions to buy the seed they want, and we still have a breeding program, and I think it's a great program. In fact, we're the envy of a lot of states in the United States here in North Dakota, and I appreciate what they do. I'm hopeful that we can continue to ramp that program up and do more, but I appreciate what our researchers have done at NDSU.
Guys are already looking seed for next year because of protected varieties. There probably won't be enough good seed for next spring.
Yeah.
Aren't we supposed to be talking about drought?
Yes, but it starts here. You won't have seed for next year.
Yeah, but we're worried about now.
There's a hand up right in here. Sir?
Yeah, I know you've talked a lot about CRP. My name's Jim Deepholder, and I'm president of the Southeast Local, Bottineau County. And on my farm, I have about 300 to 400 acres of CRP, but it's not like the old CRP, where it was whole fields and big areas. It's 20, 30 acre plots. The ranchers can't fence it, and they can't get water to it. So the grazing option is out. There's good grass in it right now, and it needs to be made now. It doesn't cost the government anything to give it to my neighbor. I don't want anything for it, but I can't give it to him because there's a duck, a goose, or a pheasant in there. The family farmer and these young ranchers are more important than the duck, the goose, and the pheasant. They'll have their babies next year. Our ranchers got them now. So I'm asking you, Governor Burgum, Commissioner Goehring, to call the President of the United States, get an executive order to release the CRP, all practices, so that now, in the next 30 days, we need to feed now for those ranchers now. They don't have pasture, they have nothing to feed them now. So they at least have a Band-Aid till the weather could change. The second thing is, there's a lot of comments about hay, hauling it in. There's no grain, there's no rain, and there's no money. That's the biggest problem. What we need is a disaster disbursement program where these guys can wean and sell down some of their herds and get a cost share to buy them back down the road. I know you're not the federal government, but you promised to be our advocates, and I believe in you. But we need to give these guys hope because they're not going to get enough hay. They know it. Deep down, they know it. So they're going to have to sell off. But if we could have the outlook and the hope that we'd have a disbursement disaster program, that the government would kick in a share of the buyback, because you know it's going to cost them a lot more when they come to buy them back. And there's no money to do it with. So that's a program that we should invent. We have 125 years unprecedented drought right now, so we need to think something new. And another thing, we've got young farmers here, and you've heard this before, most of them got 70% coverage on their crops. They take their premium out of there and they got 60 to 65. There's a big gap in there. We need to get Senator Kramer out here, and we need to get that disaster program to fill the gap, to keep them here one more generation. Thank you.
I had said that I try not to give false hope, and I'm not defending anybody, but I know that they are working on our behalf. They really are. One of the problems, if you look back in the past, and anybody recalls when we had hurricanes and wildfires and other issues going on in other states, then all of a sudden we got a disaster program. Right now, we seem to be a little bit of an island. There are some problems in the other parts of the country, but they aren't big enough yet to really stimulate some activity or some action by Congress. But I think framing all this up, there's some good suggestions here that we can take forward, and if Congress will address them in a disaster bill, instead of continuing to talk about CARES Act money and coronavirus money, we could probably start doing something that really affects and impacts the economy. Sir.
Hi, I'm Stanley Dick. I'm a Cavalier County Commissioner and also the President of North Dakota Association of Counties. And I just got a couple comments. I've been getting calls from across the state because my name's on the front of that booklet. And the one thing that people want to see, and I just talked to Terry Traynor this morning, is that early opening to CRP. And then my other question is, we have a lot of WRP in Cavalier County, and that's prime hay land. But again, it should be opened up sooner. So please, please try to get that opened up sooner, because the longer this drought goes on, the worse that grass gets. And these people need the hay now. And we have a lot of landowners that would be willing to open that up sooner too. The problem with WRP is they got that money all up front. So how do you subtract part of the payment for haying it or whatever? But there's the largest landowner in Cavalier County is U.S. Fish and Wildlife, North Dakota Game and Fish, and now we got WRP. A lot of grass. And we're in a drought too, but we're not as severe as you are here, because I've been driving the Highway 2 all the way out to Berthold with hauling faba beans, and we're probably in a lot better shape than anybody along Highway 2. But we have this availability of grass, but we got to be able to get it to the people. And I think most people would be willing to do that. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife is a big part of that too. We have people, they're grazing it, and they see that it's a good way to do it, but a lot more needs to be done with that U.S. Fish and Wildlife land as far as helping cattle producers in North Dakota.
And to that point, there are some refuges, wildlife management areas around the state where you have good managers there that are working in a collaborative effort with the livestock producers in the area, and it's working. But there are some areas, for whatever reason, that they are not opening it up. So I don't want to just say all fish and wildlife is bad, but I do have a problem with them.
We actually have a fair amount that is open to cattle producers, but it's such a short period of time.
Yeah.
And they don't usually start until middle to the end of July. And they should be out there right now. Those cattle should be out there right now when the grass is green and it's lush, not at the end of July when it's, because they'll actually tell me, I'm not a big cattle producer myself, but they'll actually tell me they'll eat those small cattails. The cattle like those. Well, by the end of July, those cattails are 6 feet high. They're not touching those cattails at that point. So we do have some good ones. We need to get this opened up sooner.
Department of Interior is just an issue, and we might have to go through the administration, go through the White House to see if we can apply some pressure, but.
Yes, this is for the Water Commission. I had a producer call me last night, and he's concerned about, he thinks, or he was wondering if I could ask you, are all irrigation wells monitored? And is there a point at certain level that they can shut them down, or are they restricted? Because he feels that they are drawing water from the water holes. You know, a lot of the surface moisture is disappearing while the water table is dropping. You follow that?
Yeah, I think I understand where you're going with this, but they are required to report their water use every year, and we do look at before issuing a permit to see what capacity the aquifer has and so forth. I mean, given the current situation, the evap that's taken place, the heat and so forth, you know, could that be cause and effect? Possibly. But, you know, the temperatures obviously are having something to do with the sloughs going down as well. You see that everywhere, even where there's not irrigation.
Is there a point, though, that they would restrict usage, or they're probably entitled to the acre feet that they
So we've got a
permitted
prior
for?
appropriations doctrine. So first in time, first in right. So those irrigators that are out there, they have the ability to use that water. You know, if we get into a situation, there's a priority system in place where municipal folks, you know, water for people has priority over the ag and so forth. But I don't know in this particular case if there's a trigger on, you know, on that area or that producer that you're speaking to. That I would have to look in the permit to see what the case is there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Governor. And
If we can get your contact information, or you and John hook up afterwards, we can look into that specifically.
okay, thank you.
John, another thing though, you guys actually do monitor aquifers all the time.
Yeah.
So it may not be monitoring that particular well, but you're monitoring the aquifer that's in the area, because I got a test well on, or a monitoring station on my place.
Yes, thank you, Doug. Yeah, we do have a series of monitoring wells all across the state, and we do run those periodically. It depends on the area where they're at and so forth, but we do monitor those levels. Thank you, Doug. It just depends on the area, but that particular situation or that particular producer, that I don't know without getting some more information from you.
Okay, we got another one in the back there, Mike?
Yep. My question is for the Water Commission to,
Tell us your name and where you're from.
oh,
please.
sorry, Mark Tiffany, Upham area. And the disaster assistance for water program, I'm planning on applying for one, but I was told by the well driller that I'm going through to wait as long as I could because he doesn't think he can get it done in the 6-month window. Is that correct?
Right. I guess I wouldn't worry so much about that. I mean, if we know the situation, and as you alluded to, there's lots of demand out there for well drillers right now, and that will be taken into consideration. So, again, I would say get on the list and get your application in, and we'll deal with the rest of that later.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Mark.
Just wanted to say too, if we have anybody in the wings or outside who wants to ask a question, just please come to one of the entrances, raise your hand. We don't want to miss anybody.
And while we see a little bit of a slowdown here, I'm going to kick it over to Miranda. At the beginning, I introduced a number of people here from Extension, but maybe just share a little bit about what services you might have, and thank you again for your role in coordinating this statewide.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. And I just want to focus first on, the role of our extension agents have had through this drought. They play a really important role in monitoring what's going on at the local level and reporting that to the state level so we can provide information as needed and programs as needed. All of the weekly, they're submitting a report to our state climatologist who uses that information, and it gets fed into the recommendation to the drought monitor. And so that's one thing that they're helping with. Obviously, they're not making the final call, but they are providing some information to support those decisions. And it's been really helpful, especially when we've gotten some recent rains, so that the climatologists don't overestimate the benefits of those recent rains. Other programs that we have is that I know both Rachel and Brendan are part of our livestock water sampling or screening program. And that's free. They have handheld TDS meters, sulfate test strips that they can go out and screen your water, see if it's potentially toxic, and help you submit a sample if that's needed. To date, they have screened across the state over 400 samples, and 40 of those have been potentially toxic. Just with the low water levels, we see those increases of those salts, the total dissolved solids, and the sulfates, and so that will fluctuate throughout the grazing period. And I want to caution too, just knowing if you do get a rainfall that's heavy, with the lack of runoff we had this spring, it's probably not going to change things, so be really cautious as you're putting those animals out there and making sure you have a safe water source. Moving forward, as we look at some of these failed crops and potential of grazing those, they offer nitrate quick tests in the offices, but you know if nitrates are present, and then we'll help you get that to the lab so you can get it analyzed to see what you're dealing with, help you blend that off and determine how it can be safely used to feed your animals. With the number of animals being culled, we have a Drought website that has a lot of press releases, different information. There's a handout that shows where to find that. We have information from cropping systems, livestock, the farm and ranch stress information is on there as well. And we just put some stuff on early weaning strategies. So how can we keep some of our animals a little longer at least? And then we worked with Department of Ag and Stockmen's Association to pull together this list of livestock resources, the handouts over in the other room, and it has links to a lot of the programs, FSA, extension publications, lots of information to help you guys through this.
Great, thanks, Miranda. And so again, be sure to, and again, extension folks, raise your hands that are here along the wall. So if you got questions there for them or Miranda, and also pick up the lid on the way out that's got all the resources on there. Mike, you got a question there in the wings?
I'm David Legine. I'm commissioner from Towner County, and I guess the best way to recover from something like this is good prices, and you know that the livestock producers aren't getting the money that the packers are. You guys got a very successful state mill and elevator. State ever thought of a state-owned processing plant?
I think in the last 2 years we've thought about state-owned everything. So it's like it is a interesting thing in a state that where we are, where we got a lot of people, freedom, liberty, private enterprise, free markets, and in some cases where we are here at the end of the supply chain. It's the mill's been very successful. The state bank has been very successful. So I think those things are those ideas keep coming up. The one thing that Doug and I did support during the dollars that came last time, because you remember at the very beginning of COVID, one of the places the first outbreaks happened was at some of these big packing plants, and that disrupted the supply chain. And so we poured through multiple grants, through multiple grant rounds, driving dollars, I think, to what, over 80?
It was in total, I want to say, it was about over $7 million that went into our small and medium-sized meat processing facilities around the state. And actually, when it was all said and done by this spring, we saw a 226% increase in capacity and efficiencies, which virtually meant, and I know it doesn't seem that way if you're trying to get an animal harvested, but it did actually expand their opportunity to access and get more animals into slaughter. But not only that, more cooler space, smoker space, coolers, refrigerators, but then it also gave greater access to the consumer, which the consumer needs to come back to buy their stuff more locally versus going to the supermarket and finding shelves there of meat. That was part of the issue, is my phone was ringing off the hook where the consumer was like, I don't know where to get meat. And I said, have you thought about the meat shop in your backyard? And a lot of them said, oh no, we should probably check that out. And a lot of them said that the quality was the same or better, and the price was pretty comparable. But to the issue specifically that you bring up about having a system in place where you have a state-owned refinery, a state-owned slaughter facility. We have a slaughter facility just across the border in Aberdeen. And some of the problems that really exist in the industry is, first, we probably need mandatory price reporting, a decent structure and framework in place. But secondly, if you're one of the big packers and slaughtering facilities, the offal, the leftover, they're selling for anywhere between $91 and we've heard as high as $179. So all those pieces and parts and hide and bone and everything else, they have a market for it across seas. You know how much our slaughter facilities pay to get rid of it? Somewhere between $70 to $119. So they're getting paid and we're paying. It inverts and it just puts every small packer in a bad position. So having a facility doesn't help you unless you have the ability to market some of this other stuff or make it more competitive to actually get rid of some of the other product that we don't have a market for. And it may take some type of consolidated effort between states, a bunch of small ones, but then everybody's got to be committed to the cause, because once you establish a market and you're committed to send stuff to Korea, China, Southeast Asia, you got to do it. You got to continue to follow through, because that's what they can deliver. They have customers for the chicken feet, for the hearts, for the tongue, for the brain, for the hide, for bone, for everything. And when they have that, they're a consistent supplier, and they continue to come to it. If you're inconsistent, and I know it's a long ways around getting back to the issue, but our problems are much deeper than just having ownership in a packing facility. And there's a lot of other parts to it.
I have a question for you guys. I'm Roger Schmidt. I ranch with my family 25 miles south of town. What can you guys do to put a moratorium in place so our financial institutions don't start selling us out?
There's laws in place after the 80s that prevent them from just doing that. It's the same reason why your bankers can't make suggestions to the operation. If there's something going on, contact us. It's a mediation.
Well, there ain't right now, but I'm just concerned with the drought, how bad it's going to be on these young people that just started. So I'm just wondering, is there some moratorium in place that, that our financial institutions will help us all through this? Because there's a lot of young people that are going to get hurt with this drought. They don't go away that quick. You got to buy yourself through one of these. That's 10 years of financing to get out of it again. I've been through it. And it was ugly. And this one is actually getting worse than that one was. So I was just curious.
I was going to say, the worst thing that's happened in our industry in the last 40, 50 years that I've watched this, it's not just that our expenses go up, the cost of operating goes up. You know what really matters? It's cost of living. In the early 70s, you could farm with the same ground, but your cost of living was probably $6,300. What is it today? $63,000? And then to add, $17,000 on top of that, probably. So then you're talking about $80,000. That's some of the biggest issues. I'll encourage you and everybody else, if you have some issues, you're concerned, it's best to come to us early. We do credit counseling, we do mediation. The other thing is, I've had people come and sit down privately in my office and we'll talk about things, because that way there's no record. It's all in confidence. We can work through and kind of steer you down a path you may be able to go, and we can stop some of the bleeding. And sometimes people aren't thinking straight. They get tunnel vision, and then they make it even worse. So at least we can offer some suggestions.
Deep voice, so
My voice will carry without a mic. Because I don't need one. Everybody will hear me. I'm not in financial trouble myself, but I am concerned about all the young people that are going to run into this situation if we don't have some way to help them out. And I have a daughter and son-in-law that are taking over. I didn't spend all these years to build that place to lose it over a drought. So I'm just saying, you know, there's a lot of help needed for everybody in this situation. And it's going to have to come from lending institutions, whoever, to try to help get us through all this. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Raj. And I agree with that. And I know, again, our legislators here have been very supportive of the Bank of North Dakota. And the Bank of North Dakota has got, young farmer loans and other programs. But with our team that's here, we'll just take another action item because the Bank of North Dakota works with every bank in the state of North Dakota. And we'll, I guess I'll take it as an action item. Doug and I both sit on the Industrial Commission. We're 2 of the 3 board members for the Bank of North Dakota to make sure that through the lens of all local banks and with the Young Farmer Program to make sure that we're part of the solution and that the banking system is not part of the problem. But again, if you've got, as Doug's given you a couple options through their mediation program in the Ag Department, if people have a specific incident that's early, let us know because that can be the early warning device for us to realize that, hey, maybe we got to change policy or maybe we got to create some more backstops during these extraordinary times. Mike?
Hi, Mark Koenig, southwest of Rugby. The one thing we could do immediately right now, and you guys had talked about it, is RMA. Their stance is pig-headed. I'm sorry, but it is. This spring, I went around with them, and I have some acreage that shouldn't have been seeded. And you talk about land having to be taken out of ditches and things like that. Their stance was, if you don't seed it, don't expect to be paid. We're not saying we won't pay you, but don't expect to be paid. So once the topsoil is gone, like you said, and the land is ruined, what do you have left? Okay, the next thing that we could do immediately is some of these acres, if we could release them and graze them, that would help. It would give us time. And all we're looking for is basically tomorrow, one day at a time. And that's what my grandson told me yesterday. He said, just take one day at a time. And that's what we got to do. And if we can get RMA to cooperate with us, things will be much easier, but they're just impossible to work with. We talked about a 125-year drought. Well, so isn't there different scenarios then for this type of situation? We can't use the same guidelines that we've been using when the situation is totally, totally, totally different. And that's what frustrates so many of us. There's a short-term fix, and the short-term fix is get acres released, and that'll maybe take us to fall. Well, then we'll need to worry about hay, but let's get to fall first. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Agree with that. That's a good one. Right down here, sir. We got a mic coming to you.
I probably just short comment. Thank you for coming. Others may not be able to hear.
Outside and online.
Sorry. Thank you for coming to our area. I just wanted to mention the North Dakota grain growers have some lobbying in Washington, D.C., and that seems to be some of the challenges we're facing, so just put a plug in for them. The Stockmans have been out there talking to, and I think everybody as a team is working and we'll get it done.
Thanks for the comment. Tell us your name and where you're from.
Phil Volk, Rugby.
Great, thank you, Phil. There's one out here in the middle. Oh, there's one there, and then next right here in this row right here, Mike.
Hello, Jim Inge from Stanley, Montreal County. For the Water Commission, I know you guys haven't favored spring development because you want more of a permanent source, but if there is an actual potential spring develop with no other water source, and obviously well drillers are 6 months to a year down the line, do you look at that is one question.
I don't know the specific details as to whether that would be eligible or not. You're right about the permanency. Stock dams, those types of things, dugouts are not eligible. The spring development, I'd have to do some checking, but we can get together afterwards and I can get that information for you.
And the other one will be a touchy subject, but how about weather mod? What's your thoughts? There's a lot of social media that are very much against it. And I just think we're in this cycle that I don't think it matters either way myself, but a lot of people are saying that the planes are separating the water and suppressing the hail, but also suppressing the water. Just curious, your thoughts?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that I think one thing we've learned in the last 18 months is everything you see on social media is absolutely true. So let's keep that in mind for sure, because we don't need to go any further. But we talked about this extensively in 2017. The small program that's related to cloud seeding does go through the dollars flow through the Water Commission, but the decisions are all made locally. So this is a county, not a state. These are counties that are deciding that they want to do that. Some counties have opted out. Some are still doing it because there's been no clouds to seed. My understanding is there's been very few planes flying, but John's maybe got a little more detail on that one. But so today we got questions. John is the closest to it, but again, I would go back to the county level where those decisions are made. But John?
The governor's right. This is a local decision. They decide as a group, they vote on this and decide whether or not this is something they want to move forward. In the southwestern part of the state, Bowman and County has looked to that effort to try and increase rain production. Whereas in the northwest corner of the state, there's a couple of counties up there who've decided to participate for hail suppression purposes. And as the governor alluded to, some of those counties come in, some of them go out. I know Ward County has recently pulled out of that effort, but that's been ongoing for some time. As to the details of what those impacts are of that, we have information on that and we can discuss that further at a later time. But there, like you said, there's lots of opinions out there, and which one is true remains to be seen.
Well, there's one, or I think there was one here in the middle here. We got a microphone coming in for you. Thank you.
Good morning. Jesse Fonestock, Towner, Willow City. I want to attack RMA a little bit again, because you guys are here and you guys are dogs we can send in there, I guess. I think everyone here has probably hayed CRP. It's the roughest, most expensive hay you ever put up in your life. I think everybody would agree with that. The only people that benefit are the partsmen and chiropractors. So I look locally. We've got small grains have been tested. A lot of it that's put down early, high nitrates. We can't even graze it. I know some of it's going to be better than others, but if we get outside of our immediate area, we've seen some rains fall. Lonnie touched on it. Some of this 15 bushel and under stuff, we're never going to be able to graze, we're never going to be able to hay because the nitrates are too high. What about that 25 bushel stuff, that 30 bushel stuff that's going to hurt the farmer's APH if he has to harvest it, and there's going to be no straw behind it because it's diminished in quality? Can RMA somehow get that so it's advantageous for the farmer to get that to the rancher? Maybe he doesn't have to take the 25 bushel. Maybe he can take a trend yield. I'm throwing suggestions out there because we need hay. That's what we need. I think a lot of us can eat by this summer, and we've got nothing for this winter. So the best, easiest forage available is going to be some of this, small grains probably. So what can RMA do to make it advantageous for the farmer so he doesn't take a hit and also help get it into that rancher's hand? And without that gouge factor that always happens as soon as you release hay or any kind of crop to be hayed. So thank you.
I could sit here and just smile. And as I said before, I won't give you false hope. My God, the problem within RMA is everybody is siloed. And it's like bringing up the issue when we had the prevent plant issue and we're trying to get, for soil health reasons, get cover crops put in, get that ground utilized, suck up that moisture, get rid of vegetation so it doesn't collect any more snow. That was so far over their head. And they don't even, I don't want to speak on their behalf and say they don't care about the farm or care about the livestock producer, but we'll continue to go down this road and try to just bring that issue along with the other ones to light. We'll see where we can go with it. Best I can tell you.
Thanks, Jesse. Good suggestions. We're going to keep hammering on this. Hopefully, right at the head of RMA, if we can get him to North Dakota. That's the plan. But that's a really good suggestion.
I think we probably need to start to wrap it up, Governor. If we want to hear from the general and
Okay,
Cody.
Great. I do want to, as I said at the outset, General Dorman and his crew, we're fortunate in our state to have one of the finest National Guard teams in the country. These guys, whether it's floods, droughts, and now wildfires, doesn't matter. They've been there providing the response. The general and I had a chance just a week ago on Saturday to send off 225 soldiers that are on a year-long deployment. These are citizen soldiers. You probably know some of them. They've got jobs. They got families. They're North Dakotans. They're out doing a great thing for our country, our nation. But when they get called up here in North Dakota, as they have been recently, they've been incredible. I know from talking to other governors, we had these wildfires out west. We had the one that was coming right at Medora, at the town, the amphitheater, all the infrastructure there. And if I'd have been governor of some other state and I said I need Blackhawks there, I might have been told, good, we'll be there 2 or 3 days from now. General had everybody in position. We knew there was wildfire danger. Those guys, we made a decision less than 5 minutes after we made the decision. The orders were out. These guys were like firemen sliding down the pole, getting in the helicopter. They got to Medora and they stopped the fire literally at the edge of the town after we'd evacuated the whole town. And so for whether it's that particular day, that's just another day in the life of the North Dakota National Guard. But let's give them all a hand for the great work they're doing.
All right, thanks, Governor. I'll be brief. We're focused mainly on the wildfire piece of this, but after the governor declared a disaster declaration, like we did in 2017, we put a combined unified command, we call it, together for both drought and wildfire, because there is overlap. I need to support Commissioner Goehring. I need to be wired in with the federal, state, and local firefighters. God bless all you local firefighters. I know what you went through in 2017, and the governor already highlighted how many more acres have burned this year. So on top of all the other stress you're experiencing, I know you're getting called out multiple times. So thank you for what you do. The Unified Command, really what we're trying to do is bring everybody in state government and anyone that can be part of the solution. If we got liaisons from the federal government, liaisons from the private sector, we are here, Cody and I are here to listen to what your concerns are and to get a better understanding of what you're going through. Our job is to be at our best when you're having your worst day ever, whether that's dispatching emergency services or finding solutions to problems that are identified. We pride ourselves on being agile, thinking outside the box. We've beat up on the federal government a little bit. I'm not allowed to do that when I'm in uniform, so I won't. But
no restrictions on me doing that every day, though.
Yeah. So at night, I won't go there. You probably don't want to know what I do at night. But anyway, that's our job, to bring the team together, find solutions, and put those solutions into operation. And again, we're here to listen to what your concerns are. We signed up to serve. We serve you. But you can get a little more energy behind what you're doing when you meet the people that you need maybe help out down the road. So I'm going to hand the mic to Cody. He'll talk just briefly about wildfires. I want to thank the legislature and the governor. Late in the session, we knew that it was going to be an active fire season. We went to the legislature asking for additional resources so that we could do things like get Blackhawks up in a matter of minutes because we knew the money was there, we knew the authority was there. So I want to thank the legislators for that support. And again, I want to thank all the firefighters. I learned more about firefighting in 2017 than I thought I would ever learn in my lifetime. But it's a pretty good operation from the federal, state, to local level. I'll say it might be one enterprise where everybody seems to play pretty nice together. But we know firefighters are going to be under a lot of pressure this year. So we're looking at solutions. I've trained up some additional guardsmen. We brought guardsmen on to fight fires on the ground. Now that North Dakota Forest Service, another part of our unified command, has got their summer help up. Some of those guardsmen have come back off orders, but we have a great plan in place that if we need to bring more firefighters in, we can do that. Cody will talk about that. The last thing I want to share with you, and maybe you don't want to hear this from me, but I'll tell you the same thing I tell my soldiers. Your equipment and your people are the two most important things. And we all know right now a spark here, a spark there could start a fire. So your equipment and then your people. And just ask all of you to check in with one another. You'll probably hear that repeatedly, but that's an expectation I have of my soldiers. Because I can tell you when I go and ask somebody how they're doing, they see my rank, they go, "Good, sir." But when a friend, family member, someone they were willing to confide in says, "How you doing?" You'll probably get the real ground truth. So just ask neighbors, friends, relatives, check in with one another. There's lots of resources out there if you're having a bad day to make sure that we can get you the help you need before that bad day gets even worse. So I'll stop there. And Cody, if you want to just touch on the firefighting program a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you, General. General did a great job of explaining what our role is at the Department of Emergency Services. We try to help those local, state responders, federal as well. As the General indicated, the legislature and governor provided us with some funding to help out on the firefighting side. And thank you. I want to reiterate thanks to those volunteer, whether it's EMS, fire. I know you guys have had a tough and busy go of it, EMS from COVID and now the fire season. I just looked at the numbers, over 1,000, almost 1,100 acres burned in Pierce County to date that's been reported up. And it's not just the acres, it's the number of calls, the fatigue, the cumulative fatigue of these folks going out. And I know it's mostly all volunteers doing it, so a huge thank you there. But the fire chiefs may have seen a survey go out. We pushed it through a number of different channels, from DES to the emergency managers and the Forest Service to the fire chiefs. But we know that there are some areas that are just getting called out over and over and over again. And the fatigue there is real. So we're asking for folks to raise their hand to be able to do some intrastate mutual aid. And we've had a number of fire departments raise their hand already and say, hey, if there's another community or area in need, we're willing to send help and fire trucks and firefighters out a week at a time or whatever it takes, and we'll be able to do some reimbursements on that. So if your responders need it, please work with us and we'll get some relief there. Just want to talk about fire safety issues. I know I'm speaking to the choir here, preaching to the choir, but please always be aware, whether it's trailer chains, welding, grinding, torches. We're going to do some messaging with our partners on that. And I know we've got a couple young men that might not be happy, but fireworks is another thing we're really focused on. I think we've got some county commissioners in here as well. Thank you for your service. I think 45 of the 53 counties have some sort of burn ban in place right now. We're asking emergency managers and county commissioners to ensure that you take a look at that and make sure fireworks is part of that if you believe that's going to be a significant risk in your county, and we know how dry it is out there. So you may want to look at that, talk to your county commissioners and make sure that's part of it, and that we're messaging that to the public, that that risk just might not be worth it. And then lastly, I'll just double and triple tap some of the comments that have been made already as it relates to stress management. And as General Dorman said, the teams that we lead are primarily dealing with folks when they may be having their worst day. And it's a real thing. We refer to it as critical incident stress management. And what you guys are dealing with here, just the cumulative nature, and what you do is not just a way to make a living, it's a way of life. So we understand that and the generational aspects to it. So please do not hesitate to reach out if you need to talk to somebody, if you need that help, there are some professional resources I think the governor may touch on in a second as well. But be that resource for others if you can. That peer-to-peer support is just so huge. So I'll just stop and say, if there's anything, you've got great emergency managers in this state at the local level. We try to support them as well as our state partners. We'll continue to do so. But don't hesitate to reach out to us if there's anything we can do. Thank you.
Thanks, General. Thanks, Cody. We're in closing out here. I just want to make sure again we've Gary Kraft, FSA. Gary in the corner there. Step into the room. Raise your hand so you can see him. Can we have a mic for him for 1 second, Gary? I want to make sure everybody that's at least in Pierce County, maybe they all know how to get a hold of you. But if there's anything you want to say, give a shout out and thanks to you and everybody at FSA. I know you guys are very busy right now.
We're busy with acreage reports. We kind of quit taking LFP applications until our acreage reports are done now. But LFP, roughly, Cheryl, what is it, about $90 a cow-calf pair if you have enough pasture for them, is what your payments end up to be, because we're at up to the max now, 5 months payments for that. On the CRP subject, we can complain all we want in the county office about getting things changed. We can't do it. It's got to come from up above. So that's about all I got to say.
And Gary, on workload processing everything in 2017, we arranged to get more bodies into some of the FSA offices around the state to help speed up processing. How you doing here in Pierce County?
We're doing okay with our staff, but we're having a hard time competing for employees these days too. Just we don't pay as well as we used to in comparison. So,
well, keep us posted if part of the challenge you're having serving them as the federal government isn't getting staffing to you, then we worked on solving that in 2017 to speed things up, because we have a program. We talk a lot of programs that work, but the ones that do work, if the checks are too slow, that's a problem also. So anyway, thank you for being here. Thanks for all your team's hard work. In closing out, I just want to say again, the General and Cody talked about stress. We do have just recently launched, it's easy to remember, a 211 line. North Dakota Department of Human Services. It's comprehensive. It's 7 by 24 hours a day. If you got a family member, a friend, a neighbor, somebody you're worried about, for whatever reason, you can call in and get coaching on how to approach the person, or you can ask that family member to reach out to them. But again, we know that the droughts are it's like the slow burn, and they're diabolical, and they put pressure on communities and family and on businesses. But again, we're all going through this thing together. I think the one thing that, as Doug and I advocate with the federal government, we talk about some of these other programs. When there's a hurricane in Louisiana or Florida, it makes great news, and the whole nation knows there was a disaster. And then the federal government sends all kinds of aid and emergency aid. When you've got disasters like that, when you have flooding, down in the lower Missouri, and everybody can show pictures of floods for weeks, the whole nation knows there's flooding, they should disaster aid. Droughts don't make such great visual TV. I mean, it's hard for people to understand how bad it actually is and how critical it is. So part of our job is to make sure that we keep pushing to make sure we've got to get some of these program changes. As it was said up here, these are extraordinary times. We need some extraordinary responses. We're just going to keep pushing to see if we can get a breakthrough on that. But again, part of our ability to do that is because all of you came today. So thank you for being here. Thanks for your presence. Thanks for everybody that's watching online, because your input gives up both the ideas, and it fires up our motivation to actually get out and push even harder than we already have been. So with that, I just want to close and say, we are all in it together. Look out for each other. But right now, for being North Dakotans who care about each other, care about their communities, care about the land, care about your livestock, we say thank you. We admire you. We're grateful for you, because it takes a special breed of person to put themselves into agriculture in this day and age and fight through all the things you can't control, and work so hard to do it for your families and your friends, and many of you have been doing it for generations. So with that, give yourselves a round of applause. We're grateful for all of you. Thanks for being here today. And then some of us we're heading off to another one of these, so we are not going to be available to hang around for an hour and ask questions, but I believe, Miranda, all of the extension people are. So if you've got additional questions, grab the extension folks, they'll get them to us. But again, thanks for being here.